Hey everybody, it's 7 a.m. in my little town here, and I thought this morning I'd come out to this neat little park and see. Last night we had a pretty cool little thunderstorm going on, and usually after we have a storm, then the weather is interesting the next day. We usually have cool clouds or fog or something, and I thought that this neat pond might have some fog that would be interesting to photograph. So we're down here at the pond, and I'm going to set up and take a bracket, and then we're going to show you how we process that. So I thought this was a neat little scene right here that would work out cool. So that's what we're doing. I've got a bird right above my head who's really happy that I'm here this morning. So now the lower that I get to the water, the more the fog will show up. You might not be able to see it really well right now, but we're going to shoot down the pond. And I'm shooting with a Sony A99. This is my kind of go-to camera. And I have a Carl Zeiss 24 to 70 millimeter 2.8 lens on there. So we're going to be shooting at f8 today. And we got some nice sun that's just rising here behind us. This is just a little city park. And so we'll see if we can use that to our advantage to kind of highlight that fog as well. And we may move and do a few things too. I'm not sure yet. I am going to move to my left a little bit to kind of mask the telephone pole that's in my shot. Got to get just right because there's a couple of them. You can see here. I'm going to shoot right down the water line to split my shot in two. Not a very interesting sky today, so. And zoom in and get our focus. That looks good. And that gives us 3 shots. You can take a quick peek at those just to see what that looks like today. Yeah. The sky is really boring, unfortunately. So sometimes when I have a big contrast like between the trees and all of that, I sometimes like to shoot more brackets, but we'll see. So let's move a little bit and see if we can get a better angle. It's a neat little park, lots of birds. Aren't used to me being out this early. Sometimes you have to get up really early in the morning to capture the right weather or capture the look that you're going for. So let's see what we get here is a little bit nicer. I kind of like this. And like I said, it is a city park, so we do have a dog barking in the background who's getting in my video as much as he possibly can. I like the reflections here. And the tree hanging and the kind of natural arch that's being made. I don't know if you can see the focus highlighting, which is a feature that Sony has. It's really awesome for being able to see what's in focus in your viewfinder. It's a very nice feature, and it's actually can even kind of show me the hyperfocal distance, which is really cool. I can see when everything's in focus at once. So let's try a bracket there. You can definitely see the fog down there in the trees is pretty. And we'll back up a little bit so you can see more trees. There, that's kind of a nice shape through there. I really like that. When you're out shooting, you want to try these different angles because you want to basically see what you like the best. And so you can try these different angles and get the best composition that you can out of all this. So let's take a walk down here a little bit and see what we can see. There's some power lines that go right across the middle of the pond, and trying to avoid those if I can. Sometimes you can't. You just have to deal with them in post, or just deal with them in real life, which is what I'm trying to do. So I'll take another look at another spot here. See those power lines right there, right across the middle. Maybe we'll walk down a little further and pick this up when we get there. Okay, well, we're here at the power lines, and sure enough, sometimes the first place you pick is not always the best. You have to do a little walking and a little moving around to see if you can find a better spot. And there seems to be a nice fog bank rolling in down here, so we are going to take a look at this. Get past those power lines and see what we can do here. Lots of fog down here. This is kind of cool. All surrounded by the trees. Let's see what we get down here. Trees and mosquitoes. All right. And that's not too bad. Like that, lots of wildlife here. So there's some more of our fog that we were looking for down there. Let's just see what we get here. All right. May have to walk a little more, you never know. So, get a few, and a fish jump right in front of, oh, nice. We'll get the pond ripples going there. There's a fish that just jumped right in front of me. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. And let's see. We'll look down to where I parked, which is, you can't really see where I parked anymore. And we walked all the way down to the other end, so we might as well walk a little bit more and see what we can do. Definitely more foggy down here. We'll go one more set of trees, see what we can see. I always like this area down here with the grove of trees, and I might take a picture of them. Let's get a shot right through there. That's kind of neat. So we get a nice surprise of finding something completely different in the midst of all of this. There's some lines running down this part of the camera that look cool, and they're leading out to the trees, so we're going to use those lines in our composition to lead into the fog. Shoot our 3 brackets. A little darker down here, so we got to go a little lighter. And let's just make sure we're in perfect focus. You never know with the LCD and the fog. Okay, there we go. Really pretty. So yeah, I think that'll work. Suddenly the fog bank rolls in. Awesome. Let's go process some photos and see what we got. Okay, so as I was walking back, I spotted another shot here, so I think I'm going to get this before we return to the car. This is pretty cool. I kind of think I want to shoot from, get this log in here. And the fog has rolled in nicely. And even though we have our wires up there, I'm going to cut those out. Yeah. I'm going to focus tightly on that giant branch sticking out of the ground there, or out of the water. Right there. There we go. Cool. All sorts of things in the scene. If you take the time to look at them, you can find cool little compositions just about everywhere. There we go. All right, back to walking to the car. Okay, everybody, here we are back in the studio. Downloaded the photos, had a cup of coffee and some butter with toast on it, and put Benadryl all over my mosquito bites from my little adventure, and we're going to select and process some photos. And I shot brackets today, so what I'd like to show you is how to process 32-bit HDR. And it can be done a couple of different ways, and I will try to explain that as I go along. So let's go through the photos though and see here what we like. I started out at the end of the pond, so let's take a look at that one. So that's here, and it's a nice shot. It doesn't look too bad. I think I made note while I was out in the field that there were some wires running across here. You can see these in the darker exposure right there. And so yeah, I don't know as I want to use this one or not. I could clone those wires out and you know, possibly use this shot down the road. Who knows? Don't know if I want to do that today though. Let's take a look at this shot. This was moved up a little bit and looking through the trees with the framing. Kind of like that shot. Again though, we have our wires right through the middle here. So probably not interested in using that shot. So we took a few there that were kind of different. Let's look at that. Zooming in. Okay, so that's not too bad. Again, the wires, of course. And then you look over here, there's also, being in the city, you know, if you don't want wires in your shot, you kind of have to watch out for this sort of thing. So then we moved up a little bit more. And this was nice. I like this here, the willow trees coming down and touching the water. And there are some houses over here, but you know, they're not really distracting in the shot, and I kind of like that. And then remember, there was this nice fish that decided to jump perfectly in the shot. So just as I was shooting the bracket. So I really like the detail of the water ringlets. I think that would be a really neat thing to include in the shot. Very cool. I really like that a lot. Let's quickly look at the rest of these. This is the same sort of shot, but you know, without the jumping fish, which I think really, as I saw in another video, is the X factor. So, and then there was the grove of trees. This is, you know, neat, but there's not a whole lot going on. I mean, you know, I took the shot out there just to kind of see what it would look like, and there's some fog and it's got atmosphere, and that's cool, and I may use that down the road, but I don't think for today. And this shot, which I do like, there wasn't anything really happening in it too much. It is kind of neat. The fog really came out well. I don't think, let's see here. But our wonderful high wires are once again right across the middle of our pond. And I really don't want to deal with cloning things today. So we're just going to do some basic processing. And then there was a close-up. This one isn't too bad. This would probably be my number 2 selection. I like the detail in this. So yeah, and there's really, this is nice. I like the composition. I like the fog. So that would be a close number 2, and I'll probably process that as well. And there's also some other shots that I didn't take on camera as I was walking back, because this always happens when you're out and you're taking shots, is that, you know, you'll always see something. So there's kind of a neat baseball field that I was near. This might be cool, and I shot directly into the sun with the fog lighting the trees. You can see some other, yeah, some neat stuff there. So that'll be some bonus material that I will process, or maybe even give to you to process. We'll see how that works out. So, all right, so I think we've made our selection. I think we're going to go with the fish shot, because, I mean, the fish jumped in our shot, so we should probably use that shot. Okay, so these are the 3 exposures. They are -2, +2, and 0 EV on the meter. So let's get to processing those. So the first thing I want to do when I'm going to process 32-bit is I really try to take a close look and see if anything was moving at all in the shot. And this was a nice calm morning, so the only thing that was really moving was our ripple. And normally, if something's moving, I will use Photomatics and some selective deghosting so that we don't deghost the whole scene and get artifacts and all that kind of stuff. But in this scene, nothing's moving but the ripple, and actually the more ripples that you see, I think the better that it will look here. So we're going to do a test first, and we're going to try to process this with Adobe Photoshop and HDR Pro. So let's give this a whirl. So we're going to select the 3 exposures first, and we're going to move to the Develop module. Now in the Develop module, the very first thing that I want to do is make sure my white balance was properly set, which it was. So we're good there. If you're unsure on a foggy day like this, you can just click on anything that is gray or white or black, and you can select your white balance from that. So yeah, we might have been a little bit off there. So we just selected the white. We knew the sky was white up here. And we are going to then enable profile corrections for our lens correction. You can see here it properly selected my Carl Zeiss 24 to 70 millimeter lens. And we also want to remove chromatic aberrations, those little pink and blue things that can appear. Now today there probably weren't any because there was no real backlighting here, but in case there were any along here, we want to make sure that they're out of there and no longer in our shot. So then we hit the sync button, because we're going to sync all these frames together with the same settings, so synchronize. And that will adjust the white balance, the lens correction, and the chromatic aberrations to all be the same when we process them. So once we have that done, now what we want to do is send this over to Photoshop. So we are going to right click on any of our photos, and we're going to edit in, and then scroll down to HDR Pro in Photoshop, and that will load the files over there. Okay, after many screens and windows later, we now come to the Merge to HDR Pro. And there's a few things here. We want to make sure that we have 32-bit mode selected. So we don't want 16 or 8-bit, we want 32-bit, because we're not going to tone compress this shot. That's the cool thing about 32-bit, is that it does not tone compress. So we're basically not going to tone compress. We're going to actually bring it back into Lightroom as a 32-bit raw file, and then we'll be able to process it from there. So and today I do want to mention that this shot was not a huge dynamic range. I probably could have got away with just a single shot here. But this was for demonstration purposes, so I'm using the HDR just to show you, okay? So I don't think we need to remove ghosts. We can try it and see what it does. See, like I said, down here, it takes away the rings. That was about the only thing I think that was moving in the shot. Now, looking at this closer, I think I like the more defined ring. So maybe we do want to use the remove ghosts. I don't really like Adobe's version of removing ghosts. It leaves artifacts usually, but in this case, it looks like it's pretty good. So I think we're going to use it just to accentuate the rings. Okay, so we're done. That's it. All we need to do now is hit OK, and it will send that file back to Photoshop. And here it is now back in Photoshop. Everything looks really good. And all we need to do now is just hit the close button to save it back to Lightroom. So I'm just going to hit close, and it's going to save this back to Lightroom right in my library. Okay, and now you can see that the file is safely back in Lightroom, right in the library where we assembled it. And that's all automatic. Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop work together really nice that way. So without doing extensive processing and just getting the basics down, we can see that the histogram shows that we're fairly okay here. There's some dark areas that we can fix. One of the simple adjustments I like to do with a lot of my photos, and I kind of have, this is kind of my secret, but it's kind of the way I've done it, and I really like the results to bring out the detail. But ever since Lightroom 4 something, I believe, 4 in there, they've added to the processing, they've added actually the shadows and highlights as well as the blacks and the whites. And what I like to do is push the shadows up, okay, and that gets us out of being too far into the danger zone down here. And I like to pull the highlights back, okay, and that brought in a little bit of the shadow. Now that we're not done. That's just the beginning of it. That gives you kind of a dull looking file. And yes, I am tone compressing on my own, but we're doing this non-destructively on a nice large new raw file. And then what I'll do is center my exposure. Okay, so when I center the exposure, this now brings everything into line here pretty much so I can see it. And it brings it into a protected area where we're not boosting either side of the histogram to the point of being out of gamut. So once we have that, then I like to push my contrast up, and boy, you can see the scene pop at that point. You can see the sunlight that was burning through here on the tree is coming out now. Basically just a really nice look to the photo already, and that's kind of my secret move, and I use that for the longest time. Now I do have something new that I've been using. I've actually been using and really getting into On1 Software's Perfect Effects 8, and let me just show you what I do for that. So I don't push the contrast as far. I kind of bring it up around 75, and then I'll actually pull the vibrance in the shot back a little bit. So you see that kind of made things a little less punchy and a little less saturation. And then I'll, right in Lightroom, which is great with On1, I'll go to my plugin extras, and then I will go down to Perfect Effects 8, and we're going to load that up in Perfect Effects, and I'll show you how that works. Okay, here we are in Perfect Effects 8, and I have a preset that I've saved under my own presets here, and I think I put this out on the internet a while back, but this is called Dynamic Soft Sun, and this combines two effects in the Perfect Effects suite, and one of them is a dynamic contrast and the other is a sunlight. So I've already got these all set up and saved as a preset, but today I'm going to show you manually how I do it. So I go to filters and then to dynamic contrast, I select natural, which is just the basic setup. Now you can see instantaneously that we get a nice pop there all of a sudden. Brings out these trees down here and has a really nice look to it. So a few key settings that I hit usually will protect my highlights so that I don't boost those. Not so much in this section, but when I add sunlight, it will really boost the highlights, and we don't want to overdrive those. So, and then down here in the detail section, this is kind of where the cool stuff happens. So in the small details, it will add noise into your photo if you've done any sharpening at all or plan on doing any sharpening. So I always do a little sharpening, not a lot, but I do a little, and I don't use the small details. I stay away from that setting. I will use the medium details, and you can really see, right now we're at 15. Let me boost this up so you can really see it. So, bam. You know, that really grungies things up quite a bit. I like a softer look, so I'm not really going that far. Maybe somewhere in the 19, 20 area, somewhere in there. We're going to soften this photo. It's kind of a unique process, so you'll see what happens. So, and then the large is great where it's at. Now, one of the other things I like to do to bring out the contrast is also boost the blacks just a little bit here. So, there we go. And that brought out these trees and leaves and things and really gave them some nice contrast. Now, once I've done that, the sunlight's going to undo that a little bit, but that's kind of all part of the process. So we're going to add a sunlight filter, and it's really easy in this plugin. All we do is hit the plus layer. Just like Photoshop, we're adding a layer, and then we're going to go out to our filters here, and we're going to select sunshine, and then again natural, because I'm going to adjust these all myself. So that's the natural setting. So here's the trick, something cool. We're going to protect our highlights again. Very important, because you can see that you lose a lot, and I really want to protect those. I don't want it that contrasty. I'm going for a kind of a smooth look here, even though I do have a big contrast between here and here. So, okay, so here we go. We're going to pull the amount back to about 30 or so, and then we're going to boost the warmth a little bit. That's nice. The sunlight's really warm over here. And then we're going to boost the glow a little bit. So you have to be careful with the setting, because it can really glow if you want. I mean, we could go that far. It's kind of a bit much. But, you know, if you want to make it a nice soft scene, you can find a nice medium area that has a pretty look. Now, there was a lot of fog, so we kind of, this glow makes that fog really pop. And I like the nice softness of the photo here. Now I'm going to do some more adjustments in Lightroom, but this is pretty much where we need to be at. So once we've got that, we hit apply, and the program will go ahead and do its work. Once this is finished, it will actually send the file right back into Lightroom for you. Okay, here we are back in Lightroom, and the file has been imported automatically, and it's right here to the right of the original file. And this is a nearly completed photo. So kind of really like the look here. You can see our histogram is perfect. It's well within the limits of where it needs to be. I like the color. I can see that my rings here in the water have turned out nice. And I believe all we need to do, and it really doesn't need a lot of it, is we can sharpen just a little bit to default if we want. And that's looking really good. Everything's nice and clear. So there you have it. And you know, you can tweak and tweak and tweak, but that's how I process a 32-bit HDR file. I will probably continue to do more here, and I will post this photo later on today with the video link, and you can kind of see all of the photos from today's little walk. So there you have it, a tutorial on how to process 32-bit HDR files using Adobe Photoshop and Lightroom. The process is pretty much the same with Photomatics. You have a few other features, and I do use both. One feature is the selective deghosting. Sometimes there will be some artifacts in Adobe, and then I'll end up processing in Photomatics. So I use both of them all the time, but I do use them for the 32-bit. So hopefully this will give you some insight, and you'll want to give it a shot. All right, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again soon.